Welcome gardeners. Today I am with another episode of Brics Garden Book Lecture Series. Let us discuss on some points which are required to design a terrace garden, mostly for growing your food crops, vegetable crops. So in last few episodes that we have discussed many basics of gardening. If you have not watched our YouTube channel Brics Bio, please watch so that it is much easier to understand this particular topic. So we need to consider certain points. So if you want to have a terrace garden, whether it is for a growing vegetables or growing flower plants, growing fruit plants, whatever may be the case, but I am concentrating more today on food gardens, mostly on vegetables. So first point to be considered is weight on the terrace. See, for us as terrace garden trainers or facilitators, we always get this question, sir, whether it will become very heavy on my terrace. So if we start a garden, especially when you are in a rented house, so especially the owners may be having problems. Otherwise, see, weight is generally not an issue. So all houses which are constructed following the engineering principles, so then it can sustain certain weight. See, if you go and ask any engineer, civil engineer, or maybe the specialists who are involved in this construction process, so if you ask them, they will always say that a square meter of a terrace which is constructed following engineering principles can sustain up to 200 kgs of weight. So our garden generally we have experienced over a period of time, 1 square meter probably can have 1 or 2 plants, and if you consider one pot maximum 20, 25 or 30 kgs, or sometimes if it is in a very heavy container growing a pot plants, so then it will be maybe 35 or 40 kgs. So weight is absolutely not an issue. So if you are having any reservation, probably you should just shed that reservation and start gardening. So basically all our houses which can sustain some kind of weight, some amount of weight, and there should not be any problem. So that way, so when you are anyway, so when you are planning a garden, so you should consider that how much weight that it can sustain. We have seen gardens having up to 20-25 tons in a small 2500 square feet space. So that kind of garden is, you see, it is almost like a field on the terrace. So that kind of weight that the buildings can sustain. But anyway, so we have to plan, or we have to consider this point whenever we are planning for the garden. Today, see, our growing medium has become very light. We are not using that kind of heavy growing medium. We are not using more of soil. So many times that we are using only a small portion of soil to supplement or to give certain trace elements, certain minerals for the robust growth of the plant. Otherwise, we have reduced the use of soil in the growing medium. So it is more of lightweight materials, maybe compost, vermicompost, coco peat. So these kind of growing medium as we are using, see, automatically the weight of the container comes down. So that way, so it will not be that heavy. Even then, so you should consider this point. So whenever you are planning, so you consider how much weight that our terrace can sustain. So next point is water leakage. So water leakage is not related to gardening. This we have discussed in our previous episode as well. So you can just go back and see, or otherwise there is lots to read on internet, online or offline in books. So it is not really. People have grown paddy in terraces directly on the ground, just to prove that gardening has nothing to do with leakage. Leakage is something to do with the construction, or maybe just imagine a situation that continuously it is raining, and if your terrace has leaked, and if you just go and check on the terrace, there will not be any, not even a single plant. So many of our houses that we are seeing, in buildings that we are seeing, so there are leakages. But you cannot relate that to gardening. See, it is something to do with structure, nothing to do with gardening. So that way, so water leakage is not a serious issue when you think of setting up the gardens. Even then, so it is an important point that we need to consider. So if you want to check, probably you can make water to stand in the terrace for about 24 hours or 48 hours. Probably we may have to block all the outlets, all the points where the water is going down. So maybe 500, 600, maybe 1000 liters of water that we may need, but we just close all the outlets, make the water to stand for about 24 to 48 hours, check all the corners, all the switch points and other things where there could be leakages. So if there is no leakage by this kind of standing water, then absolutely gardening cannot lead to leakage. Another point probably you should check is in the previous rainy season, if your terrace has not leaked, just because that you have started gardening, it will not leak. But even then, yes, so it is our own house and we have to be careful. So let us make all or take all the precautions so that there is no water leakage. So today your waterproof mechanisms are so good that even with simple spraying, all the cracks and crevices can be closed. Waterproof paints have come. So if you want, you can put a rubber mat on the terrace so that there is no water seepage. So these kind of things that we can take as precautions, and on that we can just put the containers or keep the containers. We have stands today so that it is not directly touching on the surface. So we have many types of stands. You can keep on those kind of stands so that the because of air movement, there will be drying of the surface, so there is no question of leakage. Of course, rainy season that you don't have control. During summer, that you can always control in your watering process, irrigation process, so that there is no drainage or water coming out, no stagnation of water at the base. So all these precautions that we can always take. But basically, so in the previous rainy season, if your terrace has not leaked, just because that you start gardening, it will not leak. So that is the basic rule. So if you can understand that, probably you can start gardening. So that is an important point, but we should be careful. Then the growing medium. So I think in the previous the fourth or fifth episode of Brics Garden Book lecture series, I have discussed about the growing medium. So you need to consider what kind of growing medium that you want to put. See, generally we suggest 1:1:1:1, one portion of soil, one portion of compost, one portion of vermicompost, and one portion of coco peat. So this is it is just to make that the structure and texture of the growing medium so good that there is or it is very good for the growth of the roots. Root aeration is there. Percolation of water, it is very good draining medium, and at the same time supplies it supplies different type of nutrients for the robust growth of the plant, flowering, fruiting, all those things. So that way, probably if you have not watched our previous episode, that you can just watch so the components of the growing medium. Otherwise it is very simple. Whatever you have in your nearby places, so that we should consider. We should think of having our own composting and vermicomposting systems, all those things that we can learn and do it, and that is very important as urban gardeners. So that has to be considered. Then another point is space available. So we want to have a terrace garden, but it depends on the amount of space that what we have. So if we have 100 square feet, so we should have a different type of or a design of garden. If we have 500 square feet, probably we can think of different type of garden. So depending upon the space available, that we need to think of, or we have to plan our garden. So that depends. See, if you ask me, so if you say that I have 100 square feet, I suggest you to go for probably only tomato, chili, coriander, radish, curry leaf, maybe lemon. So only these many plants are possible with 100 square feet, because we don't have much space. On the other hand, if you say that I have 500 square feet, so we can think of growing brinjal, we can think of growing different type of vine vegetables, we can have many fruit plants, we can have cabbage, cauliflower, all those kind of plants what we have discussed in our earlier episodes. Probably I will just explain in the second part of this episode. Then light. So light also in the, I think in the Brics lecture series of chapter 10, I think, if I remember correctly, I have discussed about the requirement of light. Light is a must. Without growing, without having light, growing crops is not correct, not possible. So there are different type of crops which are shade loving. There are different type of crops which need more light. So all those points that we need to consider when you are planning a terrace garden. See, if you are having a terrace garden, very good open space, but if you are having a tree or if you are having a building next to your terrace, probably there could be more of shade. So then you need to plan which are little shade loving type of plants, mostly the leafy vegetables. So basically the light is where the expectation is fruit or flower, you need more light. Where the expectation is leaf, you need less light. So considering these points, depending upon the topography or depending upon the light, that you need to plan the garden. Then family members. So family members, so this is the number of family members and at the same time liking of the family members. Sometimes you may be see, especially in our modern families, that we may be having maybe 3 or 4 members in a family. So depending upon the members, that you need to plan the quantity that you want to grow in the small spaces. Or sometimes that some of you may not be liking certain type of vegetables. See, tomato, for example, people having some problems with kidney and others, see, they won't like tomato or they don't want to grow tomato, then don't grow. So that way, sometimes people won't like brinjal, people won't like ivy gourd and other things. So that way, so you need not grow the whatever I say. So depending upon the liking, that you can think of growing the crops. So that's what we always say, grow what you eat what you grow. That is the major principle in urban terrace gardening or urban foodscapes. Then regular supply of vegetables, this is very important. See, it is not just growing some maybe few numbers of tomato or few numbers of brinjal or maybe few kgs of beans or something. It is very important to plan your garden in such a manner that you will get continuous supply of vegetables. See, one example that let me take. So in our food habit, we need at least 1 kg of tomato every week. So if you want to harvest 1 kg of tomato every week, at least once in 15 days you have to plant 5 plants of tomato. So that way continuously that there will be supply of tomato. Or otherwise, in other words, see, when you go to the terrace, there should be tomato planted, tomato branching, tomato flowering, tomato fruiting and tomato ripening. All these stages should be there on the terrace so that there will be continuous supply of tomato. So this is called staggered planting of vegetables. So finally it is just a planning issue. So depending upon your requirement, you have to keep planting so that continuous supply of vegetables is possible. Then multiple cropping. See, it is not one crop, so you have to think of different type of crops. So we are not like farmers. Monocropping is not the right way of urban foodscapes. So you have to have at least 10 different type of crops. So that also that I have discussed in my previous episodes. Probably you should just watch. But basically it should be mixed cropping system. One or the other type of vegetable should be available for your food purpose on a daily basis. So that has to be planned nicely. So similarly, there are many more points to be considered to plan a garden and to have a layout, a proper layout of the terrace garden. So probably that I will discuss in the next episode along with the plan of the garden. So keep watching our YouTube channel Brics Bio. Thank you for watching this episode.